There's a big controversy at Hampshire College, which is an ultra-libby-lib school in Massachusetts. Now, following Trump's election, there's been some drama involving the American flag. In fact, on the day after the presidential election, students lowered the campus flag, and it was a reaction to the toxic tone of the months-long election and the escalating number of news reports from across the country over recent months and years of hate speech, harassment, and violence against people of color, immigrants, international citizens, and Muslims. So lowering the flag was already controversial enough, but things kind of escalated from there. Apparently, 2 days after the election, someone burned the flag, okay? And so in response to that, the campus president, or the college's president, I should say, Jonathan Lash, decided to take down the flag altogether and kind of open dialogue about what's happening in the country right now. Now, this is a decision that the administration on campus made, and it did lead to some protests from people who disagreed with the decision of not flying the American flag. Now, as a result, Bill O'Reilly is outraged, okay? This is something that he felt the need to really investigate. And so he sent the top douchebag that works on his show, Jesse Waters, to do his ambush interview of Jonathan Lash, the president. So let's take a quick look at the first video where O'Reilly and Waters bash the college president.
As you may know, the president of Hampshire College, a man named Jonathan Lash, refusing to fly the American flag on campus. This led to some demonstrations against Mr. Lash and his school. So we sent Waters up to the Commonwealth.
Hey, President Lash, how are you? Jesse Waters with the O'Reilly Factor, Fox News Channel. Good to see you.
Not good to see you.
Well, now that I have you here, why did you remove the American flag from campus?
Nice to meet you.
Don't you realize the whole country's laughing at you right now?
Come on, get your foot out of my door.
President Lash, why did you remove the flag?
I don't want to talk to you about it.
Don't you think you owe it to the veterans to explain yourself?
I don't want to talk to you about it. Would you please remove your foot from my door?
You made a lot of people very upset. I think you owe the country an explanation.
You're giving speeches.
So first of all, he's in the man's garage. He's on private property doing this ambush interview. Make no mistake about it, Jonathan Lash handled that incredibly well, right? Because that was a form of intimidation. He is literally on his private property, and I don't know how someone like me would react in a situation like that, because I would certainly feel threatened, there's no question. And then he puts his foot inside Lash's home, so he's unable to close the door. That is unacceptable behavior. By the way, the university, which has done interviews and has responded to this controversy upon media requests, says that they didn't get a media request from Fox News, right? They didn't ask for a comment or a statement on what's happening. They just decided to do the ambush interview.
So that's important context because they're doing it for theater. If they wanted to just interview the guy, they could have at least tried to do it through regular channels. And if that didn't work, and then he's going into his office and you want to interview him there, I actually have no problems with that. So it depends on what you call an ambush interview. If someone doesn't answer your calls and you want to ask them a question, I think it's perfectly fine to do that. I think Jesse Waters, I totally disagree with him on 1,000 things. But sometimes, if they're in a public space, the way that he does the interviews, I think are fine in terms of journalistic practices. Here, he wanted to ambush the guy. He didn't want to do a normal interview because they wanted to put on a show, right? In some cases, somebody might be walking by and you didn't expect it, or you didn't have a chance to ask for their, it's like 1 out of 435 congressmen, and he sees him in Washington, he wants to put a mic in front of his face, no problem, right? But you went into the guy's house. You were waiting in the dark in his garage. That's insane. I guess he thought, well, he's a liberal, so he won't shoot me. I mean, there are a great percentage of Americans that if you're hiding in the dark in their garage, they're not going to be as polite.
So I looked into the gun laws in Massachusetts because I was curious to see if they had any type of castle doctrine law. Castle doctrine laws essentially give residents in a given state the right to shoot someone if that individual is on your private property and poses an imminent threat, right? So there's Jesse Waters holding a mic. He's in this guy's garage, waiting in the dark, right? What if he did come out of the car and start shooting him, right? He could have mistook that microphone for a gun or for a weapon, right? And let me ask you something, Bill O'Reilly. So if it was, let's say, a reporter from BET, a black reporter, a person of color, right? If they showed up to your home in your garage and ambushed you like that, what kind of reaction would you have?
Oh, I know. That's not a theoretical question. There was a liberal blogger back in the day who went to O'Reilly's house, and O'Reilly was furious. I mean, he unleashed on there, how dare they come to my house, right? Now, he sends Waters to the guy's house. By the way,
no, but he sends Waters to the house. What was Bill O'Reilly's reaction to what Waters did? Did he think that Waters went too far by putting his foot in this man's door? I don't know. Take a look.
I thought you handled that well with the guy.
Thank you.
It's the same old stuff. You know, these guys are cowards. He's a coward. If he had the courage of his convictions, he'd stand in with you and say, this is why I did it. Allow you to ask him questions as a journalist would in a polite way. You were polite to him. So he's a villain and a coward. But this is historically a very, I think, Amherst, Massachusetts, is the most far-left place in the country, even worse than Oakwood.
It's extremely far left. They are a sanctuary city. The town council here voted to impeach George W. Bush. And as you saw, they fly the UN flag over there. And in this school, Hampshire College, I know, and at Hampshire College, you can pick your own major. So people major in ultimate frisbee, in basket weaving, and there are no grades.
No, conservatives think this shit is okay. They think it's okay to literally go into someone else's private property and do what Jesse Waters did. And you know what? Someone's going to get killed. I know it's going to happen.
That's also not hypothetical. So let me explain. In the famous Apache helicopter video that Chelsea Manning released, that's why she's serving decades in prison now, we shot and killed from a helicopter, U.S. forces did, reporters. And none of them went to prison. The only person who went to prison is the person who released the footage, Manning. And the reason they gave for not sending them to prison was, well, they thought the camera was a gun, was a weapon, right? So, of course, anybody could think that a camera is a weapon. So we've already adjudicated in America that you're perfectly free to go if you shoot somebody with a camera. Now, that's a helicopter. It was in Iraq. I understand that. But you go into somebody's house in hiding, in the dark, with a camera like that, you think that a conservative would have blinked, you know, the right-winger, and then you think that a jury would have convicted him? They're playing around with people's lives here, including their own. So I don't want anybody to get shot. Don't shoot at people with cameras. That's insane. And that was a poor excuse in Iraq. It would be a poor excuse here. But don't enter people's house. That's a crime. So I don't know why Jesse Waters isn't arrested. Of course he should be arrested. So they call the cops on him. Now, first of all, in the garage, you already should be arrested for trespassing. Then he sticks his foot in the guy's house and won't let him close the door. No, it's an open and shut case. You go to the jury, trespassing, easiest thing in the world, that's it. Bring him to prison. Where's all those cops in North Dakota? We're going to need him here, right? I mean, we got a guy who's a clear violator of the law. So let's go. I thought Trump was all about law and order. So you want to get on it? And like they always love to make fun of liberal areas of the country. This far left place. They like the United Nations, people working together.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, morons. What happened? I thought Obama was going to let the United Nations take over the country and put us in FEMA camps and force us to live in hobbit homes. It turns out you were fucking stupid, weren't you? Oh, no, you don't like that. Oh, I'm not allowed to call conservatives stupid. Oh, they'll take offense. Don't say anything about it.
They definitely need their safe space from being called stupid.
Right.
That's
don't
for
and
sure.
you know, about conservatives, don't say anything about Alabama or Mississippi, right? No, don't say that. Oh, hey, those are real Americans. How dare you say that about Americans? Guess what? They have real Americans in Amherst too. So I didn't agree with them taking down the flag. I love the flag. I think we're the real Americans. Okay? People who say that they're for the Confederacy don't understand what this country's about. And the Confederacy, for example, were traitors to America. So we're the real Americans. So, but if you're going to go and attack liberals and liberal cities, et cetera, and you want to talk about law and order, great. Let's talk about law and order. You want to apply the same standards? Fine. You know, you call those places names, I'll call you names. And you come onto people's property, you ought to be arrested if you don't have permission, okay? So I'm looking forward to seeing Jesse Waters in prison. Podcast the whole 2-hour Young Turks every single day, commercial-free, All-Star Tuesdays, Aggressive Progressives, Old School, Post Games, TYT Classics. You get it all with membership. Do it now, tytnetwork.com/join.